Number 8 on my list, I have the Miami Heat. It feels like a top 10 defensive list would be incomplete without the Miami Heat at this point. They just always seem to be in this mix. I do think so. They were 5th in defensive rating last year. Some of that I think was a little smoke and mirrors. They gave up way too many threes, especially from the corner. Right, this wasn't a team designed to give up the above the break threes, and they were fine with the volume from there. No, they gave up a lot of threes that teams were trying to get against them. But opponents converted below a league average rate on those threes. So a little bit of a reversion to the mean in terms of 3-point luck. I think the Heat are going to just fall down this list a little bit more. They also didn't perform well defensively against some of the top 10 teams in the league. So they did most of their work against the bad teams, and they kind of padded their stats that way. The good news with Miami Heat is there's still plenty of bad teams in the Eastern Conference to do that too. So I think the floor is really high because they also don't give up shots at the basket. They do not give up shots at the basket. The 3-point variance can kind of move them up and down this list depending on however that falls. Bam Adebayo, Jimmy Butler, Eric Spoelstra, they're just too smart to finish outside the top 10. I couldn't get them any higher than this, but I had to have them in my top 10.
Yeah, I mean, then it just comes down to, and it sucks because these are the questions that really annoy everybody, especially me. It's like, all right, how many games is Jimmy playing?
Right.
Like they finished actually, pretty high in the top 5, and the fact that Jimmy wasn't healthy through most of the season and I use the word healthy loosely as much as he wasn't as interested. I think it's a big question there. Is like, how many games do you get out of these guys? Because they have the talent level. I think Bam would be in the running for defensive player of the year. I think that's something that's in the mix for him, year to year. And I think he can kind of really carry a team defensively. But if they have Jimmy on the floor for a lot longer stretches, they're going to be better. But I also think the loss of Caleb Martin is going to hurt them.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's going to slow them down a little bit defensively. They're going to have to figure that stuff out. Is it, because they're going to end up playing Tyler Hero more minutes. That's going to hurt their defense. It's, how I like Jaime Jaquez, even though he went to a stupid college. And I think the sort of improvements from him we'll see. But it's like Hayward Highsmith, really good. Can he really make up for it when he's playing a lot more minutes than he is? Is the kid Ware who's coming in, is he going to be a guy that can be counted on defensively in the NBA season? Like, there's a lot of questions with them in that sense. But again, it just starts at the end of the day, and it's the worst way to kind of deal with it is like, all right, how many games are we getting from Jimmy?
Yeah, so when Jimmy Butler was slightly more engaged after the All-Star break, they were number 2 in defensive rating, and that is proving your point exactly. But we don't know how engaged Jimmy Butler is going to be. I think a lot of people assume, oh, well, he wants his next big contract. He can opt out next summer. Okay. He's also 35 years old. Like, just sheer want to isn't enough when you get to 35, right? Like, you don't typically see players become better and more available as they get older. And that's what's happening with Jimmy Butler right now. Replacing Caleb Martin is a great shout, right? Because when Jimmy was healthy or not, Caleb Martin was drawing the short straw defensively. Like, it was like, okay, you go guard Jason Tatum, you go guard De'Aaron Fox. Like, he had to just guard all kinds of different players. Now that's going to fall on Haywood Highsmith. It's going to fall on Jaime Jaquez Jr., who was not good in one-on-one defense last year. He's an okay team defender, jumps some passing lanes. There's things that you like from him there. As a one-on-one defender, he got schooled plenty by some of the veteran scorers in the league. He just needs to be better. He's talking about it locally. He's like talking about how he wants to be better, but talking and doing is, two very different things. So they've got some ground to make up. But again,
they don't teach defense at that stupid school.
I love this. This is great. Did you know I have a John Wooden tattoo?
You have a John Wooden tattoo? What's wrong with you?
Not of his face or anything, but it's a John Wooden quote. Should I not have told you that? Did we just end the show?
Pretty much. I'm going to you keep talking. I'll just scroll the internet for a while.
There we go. Number 7 on my list. I've got the San Antonio Spurs. I'm sure you were just wondering when this team was going to pop up. There are going to be a lot of people who are going to want to put them higher on their list. And that's where I started. I'll explain why I couldn't get them much higher than this, but the fact that they were last year bottom 10 for basically most of the season, defensively, going all the way up to 7 would be a huge accomplishment for them. But the answer, the reason why is Victor Wembanyama, right? I don't need to beat around the bush here. 112.8 defensive rating when Victor Wembanyama was on the court last season. That would have ranked 6th in the NBA last season. It was even better when you had Victor Wembanyama and Devin Vassell on the court together, 109.6. That would have been number 2 in defensive rating last year. When those guys play, when Wembanyama plays, it's a walking top 10 defense. When they put their best defenders on the court, it's even better. We're talking about a defense that can be in the mix for the best defense in the NBA, and that's not even an exaggeration. I think Harrison Barnes and Chris Paul will help veteran know-how guys will be able to kind of direct the younger players in the right direction. My problem with the Spurs is that they can't defend a lick when Wemby is off the court. 121.4 defensive rating with Wemby off. They didn't really do anything this offseason, I don't think, at least to address that. And so even if Wemby plays 30 to 33 minutes per game, that's just 15 to 18 minutes where you're just going to basically give up everything that the opponent wants. And I do think it's going to be good enough to get them into the top 7, but not quite good enough to get to the upper echelon of some of these defenses that we're going to be talking about.
I think part of the reason why it's hard to put them even higher than that is the other defenses are going to be so goddamn good. Like, I think that's part of it. Like, I was curious to see if you were going to have them in your top 10, really, because I was going to say that's the dark horse to put. If you didn't, I was going to be like, they should probably be in there.
Yeah.
Just because how good Wemby is. Now, I'm a little bit worried about Chris Paul's age and the fall off or whatnot, but I also like the kid Castle that they got. I think he's going to defend well. I think Vassell does a good job with that. They have Jeremy Sohan. It's, your point though, of when he's on the bench, them giving everything away is kind of the problem. And that's the issue. So if they just improve in that area marginally, they will skyrocket up the defensive rating rankings. I think that's just kind of the obvious thing in that stuff, because Wemby is the favorite to win the next 27 Defensive Player of the Year awards. So it's not like, he's going to retire and still be the favorite. I'm just telling you facts, folks, all the way. And I think that's going to be the case there. And I think, we're looking at that with him coming in and just changing the defense completely. And if they can improve just marginally, doesn't have to be massive, doesn't have to be huge, but 2 points better, maybe 1.5 points even better when Wemby's on the bench, you'll start to see them rise really high in that ranking. So I don't think it's wild to have them in the top 10, but I do think it would be kind of insane when the teams we're about to start talking about, and their defenses, it's harder to rank them above them.
That's exactly right. And they were 12th last year in defensive rating after the All-Star break, when it felt like Victor Wembanyama really had his footing. He kind of made that one little mini leap towards the end of the year. They were playing at the full-time 5, basically, getting rid of sort of playing up at the 4 like you talked about earlier. And so there's already a proof of concept here. It's just about, like you already said, improving on the margins. And that's where I think leadership of guys like Chris Paul and Harrison Barnes will help. Just having those guys in the locker room is just all right, let's really get down into the weeds of this film session. Let's really get into the game plans of this stuff. And it probably won't be enough to turn anybody into a supreme sort of defensive player on that roster, but it'll be enough to just move the needle in a little bit more of a efficient direction when Wemby is off the court.